Preston nearly tripped over the sleek black phone lying abandoned on the sidewalk, right outside the tiny bookstore where she worked weekends. She stared at it for a second, half expecting someone to dart back for it, but the street was strangely empty. Picking it up, she turned it over in her hand, a heavy, expensive-looking thing, and frowned. No lock screen, no password. Just a blinking notification. Missed call, Graham Bishop. Guess I'm playing Good Samaritan today, Maya muttered, stuffing it carefully into her tote bag. She finished her shift, the phone burning a hole in her bag the entire time. When she finally stepped outside into the crisp early evening air, she hesitated. It didn't feel right to just leave it. Whoever lost it was probably panicking. A deep voice startled her. Excuse me. Did you happen to find a phone? Maya turned around and nearly dropped the thing again. The man in front of her was ridiculously good-looking. Tall, broad-shouldered, messy dark hair like he'd just run his hands through it in frustration. His tailored suit looked wildly out of place on this street of second-hand shops and cheap diner food. She blinked. Maybe? He let out a breath, somewhere between relief and exhaustion. I'm Graham Bishop. That's my phone. Maya pulled it out of her bag and held it up cautiously. You're lucky I'm not a thief. I'd be lucky no matter what if it led me to you, he said without missing a beat. She laughed, a little caught off guard. You're smooth. Only when I'm desperate, he said with a grin that did something weird to her stomach. He took the phone, their fingers brushing for a second longer than necessary, and she swore the air crackled between them. Thank you, Graham said, his voice dropping just slightly. Really? I don't know how to repay you. Maya shrugged, trying to act casual even as her heart hammered. No big deal. Just be careful next time. He hesitated, studying her like he was trying to make a decision. Would you let me buy you dinner? As a thank you? I insist. Maya opened her mouth to say no because wasn't that what you were supposed to do when random men offered you things? But something about him made the words stick in her throat. He didn't feel like a stranger. He felt safe and unbelievably charming. She shifted awkwardly. Dinner? Like tonight? He smiled, and it was devastating. Right now? Maya laughed again, half in disbelief. You're serious? Completely. Say yes. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, like she was the only thing that mattered. Maybe it was the boring predictability of her life lately. Either way, she found herself nodding. All right. But if you turn out to be a serial killer, I'm a black belt in bad decisions. He chuckled, a low warm sound. I'll take my chances. Maya expected him to lead her to the nearest diner. Instead, he guided her to a sleek black car parked half a block away. The driver jumped out and opened the door for them. Her eyes widened. You have a driver? Graham shrugged like it was nothing. It's easier. They drove through the city, past areas Maya had only ever seen on TV, the glittering towers, the designer stores, the places where people wore jewelry worth more than her student loans. The car pulled up to a restaurant with a name she couldn't pronounce and gold-plated doors. Maya stared. Are you serious? I'm wearing sneakers. Graham smiled, reaching over to tuck a piece of her hair behind her ear. The move was so intimate, so casual, that it left her breathless. You're perfect, he said simply. Her entire body flushed. She wasn't used to compliments that felt like they actually meant something. Inside, the restaurant was all low lighting and white tablecloths. A host greeted Graham by name and whisked them to a private corner booth. Maya leaned across the table, keeping her voice low. Okay, who are you really? Graham laughed, looking genuinely amused. Just a guy who lost his phone. Uh-huh. A guy who gets VIP treatment at places like this? He shrugged, but there was a twinkle in his eye. I own a few businesses. That's all. Maya narrowed her eyes, not buying it for a second, but she let it go. For now. Their dinner was incredible. Not just the food, though it was the best she'd ever tasted, but the way Graham listened to her. Really listened. Like every word she said mattered. He asked about her job at the bookstore, about her dreams of opening her own someday. He told her funny stories about growing up in Boston, about getting kicked out of boarding school twice. They talked and laughed like old friends, and when dessert came, Maya realized she didn't want the night to end. Afterward, he walked her to the car, his hand hovering at the small of her back. In the back seat, the city lights blurred past, and Maya snuck sideways glances at him. Graham caught her once and smiled, and she had to look away before she melted into the seat. When they pulled up to her apartment building, she turned to him, heart hammering. "Thank you? For dinner. And everything." He leaned closer, his hand brushing hers. "Can I see you again?" Maya smiled, feeling something inside her crack open. "Yeah. I'd like that." Graham's eyes darkened, but he didn't kiss her. He just squeezed her hand, like he was making a promise he fully intended to keep. As she climbed out of the car, Maya felt like she was floating. She didn't know who Graham Bishop really was. She didn't know that he was one of the richest men on the East Coast. She didn't know that tonight was just the beginning. And she definitely didn't know he was already falling for her. Maya pushed open the heavy glass door of the bookstore the next morning, still feeling the lingering warmth of last night. She tossed her tote bag behind the counter, pulling her hair into a messy bun as she glanced around. The shop smelled like old paper and fresh coffee, the way it always did on Sundays. She was halfway through shelving a cart of new arrivals when the bell above the door chimed. She turned, expecting to see Mrs. Langley from the antique shop next door, or maybe one of the regulars who came in for poetry books. Instead, Graham walked in. He wasn't wearing a suit today. Dark jeans, a white button-down rolled at the sleeves, and a leather jacket that somehow made him look even more devastatingly handsome. He carried a simple bouquet of wildflowers, nothing fancy, but bright and colorful. Maya stared at him in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" His mouth curved into a slow, genuine smile. "I told you I wanted to see you again." She wiped her hands on her jeans, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "I didn't think you meant." Immediately. "I don't believe in waiting when something feels right," he said, stepping closer. Maya tried to hide her flushed cheeks by pretending to organize the books on the cart. "You really didn't have to bring flowers." "I wanted to," Graham said simply, setting the bouquet down on the counter. "Thought you might appreciate something real." She couldn't help but touch the petals, her fingers brushing over the vibrant colors. "They're beautiful." He leaned against the counter, watching her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. "Are you free after your shift?" Maya hesitated. She worked until 3, and then she had planned to spend the afternoon reorganizing her tiny apartment, but staring into Graham's eyes made all her plans feel small and unimportant. "I could be," she said, trying to sound casual. "Good," he said, his voice low and certain. "There's something I want to show you." When her shift finally ended, Maya found him sitting outside on the bench, tapping something into his phone. He looked up the moment she stepped out, standing immediately. "You ready?" he asked. "Lead the way," she said, tucking the flowers carefully into her tote before falling into step beside him. Instead of the sleek car from last night, he led her around the corner to a glossy black motorcycle parked at the curb. Maya stopped short. "You ride?" He grinned. "Only when I want to feel alive." She hesitated, eyeing the bike warily. "I don't know." "I brought a helmet for you," he said, holding up a second one. "Trust me?" The way he said it soft, inviting, made her heart leap into her throat. She nodded, grabbing the helmet with a shaky laugh. "You're lucky I'm feeling brave today." Once they were both strapped in, Graham revved the engine, and they shot off down the street, the wind whipping against her jacket. Maya clung to him instinctively, her arms wrapped tight around his waist. They wound through the city, then out onto a coastal road lined with cliffs and sparkling water. Maya had lived near the ocean her whole life but had never seen it like this, the horizon endless and wild. Finally, Graham pulled into a small overlooked parking lot. They climbed off the bike, and he led her to the edge of the cliff where a wide expanse of sea stretched before them. Maya hugged her arms around herself. "It's beautiful. I come here when I need to breathe," Graham said quietly, stepping beside her. "Thought you might like it." She glanced at him, feeling something shift between them. "You don't really seem like the type who needs to escape." His mouth tightened slightly. "Everyone needs somewhere to hide sometimes." She didn't press, sensing something deeper beneath his polished exterior. Instead, she asked, "So what kind of businesses do you own?" "You never really said." Graham hesitated, kicking at a rock near his boot. "Investments. Tech startups. Real estate. A little bit of everything." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That sounds big." He shrugged. "It is. But it's not the most important thing." "What is?" she asked, genuine curiosity spilling into her voice. He looked at her then, not at the ocean, not at the sky. "Right now?" "You." Maya's breath caught. There was no teasing in his voice, no flirtation. Just raw, honest emotion. Before she could respond, he shifted the mood with a crooked smile. "Come on. I have something else planned." They rode for another 20 minutes, Maya clinging tighter this time, feeling bolder. When they finally stopped, she realized they were at a small marina. He led her down the docks to a sleek yacht that looked like it could fit half the city inside. Maya stopped in her tracks. "You have a boat?" "I have a few," Graham said casually, helping her aboard. "This one's my favorite." They lounged on the deck, the sun warming their faces, the gentle sway of the water lulling her into a peaceful haze. Graham handed her a cold bottle of sparkling water and leaned back against the cushions. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," he said, his voice low. Maya blinked. "That's a heavy request." "I can handle it," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. She thought for a moment, then said, "I'm scared of being ordinary." Graham's expression softened. "You could never be ordinary." Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to being seen like this, to someone peeling back her layers without even trying. "What about you?" she asked, needing to shift the spotlight. He hesitated longer than she expected. Finally, he said, "I'm scared of being loved for the wrong reasons." Maya studied him, understanding flickering between them. "Maybe you just haven't found the right reason yet." "Maybe," Graham said, his voice rougher than before. They sat there for a long time, watching the sun dip lower in the sky, the air turning cooler. Graham didn't rush her, didn't push. He just sat there, letting her exist exactly as she was. When he finally drove her back to her apartment, the city lights twinkling around them, he walked her to her door again. Maya hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. "Thank you? For today?" "I don't even know how to describe it." "You don't have to," Graham said, brushing a knuckle lightly down her cheek. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. She wanted him to. But instead, he stepped back, giving her space. "I'll call you," he said. Maya smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I'll answer." As she slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind her, she leaned against it, her heart thudding against her ribs. She was in trouble. Deep, beautiful trouble. Maya stood behind the counter at the bookstore on Tuesday afternoon, pretending to alphabetize a stack of travel guides, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Every time the door creaked open, her stomach tightened, half hoping and half dreading that Graham would walk through it again. He hadn't called. Yet. She told herself it was fine. Normal people didn't fall into whirlwind romances after 2 days. "Excuse me." She turned so fast she nearly knocked over the pile of books. Graham stood there, holding 2 large cups from the coffee shop across the street. "For you," he said, offering one with a hopeful tilt of his head. Maya blinked, taking it automatically. "You bribing me with caffeine now?" He laughed, and it was warm and low, threading through her like a promise. I figured it was safer than showing up with a yacht this time. You figured right, she said, hiding a smile behind the lid as she took a careful sip. It was exactly how she liked it, down to the cinnamon sprinkle on top. You remembered, Maya said, surprised. I pay attention. He leaned one elbow casually on the counter, close enough that she caught the fresh scent of his cologne, something sharp and clean. Today he wore dark slacks and a navy sweater, looking effortlessly expensive without trying. I was hoping, he continued, you might let me steal you away for a few hours. I have a shift until 6, Maya said, hating how disappointed she sounded. Then I'll wait, Graham said without hesitation, settling into one of the worn leather chairs near the window. You're just going to sit there for 3 hours? She asked, half amused, half incredulous. I can read, he said, plucking a novel from the display. Or stare at you. Either works. Maya shook her head, laughing under her breath as she turned back to her work. But she couldn't stop glancing at him, sprawled there like he belonged, flipping through pages with an easy patience that somehow made her chest ache. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, the sky outside was fading into a moody blue, and Maya found Graham still there, the book closed on his lap. You're serious about this kidnapping plan? She asked, pulling on her jacket. Very, he said, standing smoothly. But only if you're willing. She hesitated a beat, then nodded. Fine. Where are we going? You'll see, Graham said, opening the door for her and offering his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. She took it without thinking. Instead of the car or the motorcycle, Graham led her a few blocks over to a quiet street lined with brownstones. They stopped in front of an elegant stone building with wrought iron balconies and heavy wooden doors. You live here? She asked, eyeing the place. For now, he said, pulling out a key and unlocking the door. The foyer inside was all marble floors and high ceilings, a grand staircase curving up to the second floor. Maya followed him up, feeling like she'd stepped into a dream. His apartment or penthouse really was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city skyline, and the open space was filled with sleek, modern furniture in neutral tones. A few abstract paintings hung on the walls, and a grand piano gleamed in the corner. Graham tossed his keys onto a side table. I hope you're hungry. Maya turned to him, stunned. You cooked? Not personally, he said. But I know people. Before she could respond, a woman in a crisp black uniform appeared from the kitchen, smiling politely before retreating discreetly. Maya stared after her. You have staff? Only when necessary, Graham said, watching her carefully. I don't like being alone in big spaces. She chewed the inside of her cheek, unsure what to make of that. He led her to a dining table set for 2, candles flickering gently between polished wine glasses. The food was already laid out, steaming and delicious smelling. I feel underdressed, Maya muttered, sliding into a chair. You're perfect, Graham said simply, pouring her a glass of white wine. Always. Dinner was a blur of rich flavors and easy conversation. Graham asked about her favorite books, what she would do if she had unlimited money, what scared her most about chasing her dreams. What about you? Maya asked, swirling the last of her wine in the glass. If you could do anything, no limits? I already can, Graham said, but there was something hollow in his voice. That's not the same, Maya said, leaning forward. What would you do if it wasn't about money or success? He paused, looking down at his plate like the answer scared him. I think I'd build something lasting. Something that mattered. Like what? A family, Graham said quietly. A real one. Maya's heart twisted painfully. She wanted to ask more, but the look in his eyes made her bite her tongue. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, the city stretched out like a glittering carpet beneath them. The air was cool, and Graham draped a soft cashmere throw around her shoulders without a word. You're not what I expected, Maya said, watching the lights blink in the distance. Neither are you, Graham said, his voice rough. She turned her head to look at him, and for a long moment either of them moved. Then he leaned in, slow enough that she could have pulled away if she wanted to. She didn't. His lips brushed hers, tentative at first, then surer when she leaned into him. The kiss was soft, searching, like he was asking permission to want more. When they finally broke apart, Maya's fingers were tangled in the front of his sweater, her heart hammering wild and reckless. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you," Graham said, his forehead resting lightly against hers. Maya laughed shakily. "Took you long enough." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other and the night, until the stars faded behind the city glow. Later, when Graham walked her back to the street, he didn't ask for anything more. He just kissed her hand, ridiculously old-fashioned and heartbreakingly sweet, before letting her go. Maya wandered home in a daze, her lips still tingling, her heart a mess. She didn't know where this was going. But she was starting to believe that with Graham, maybe, just maybe, anything was possible. Maya stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bathroom, smoothing the navy blue dress Graham had sent over that morning with a handwritten note tucked inside the box. "Dinner with me. No excuses." She had protested, of course. She didn't need designer clothes to have dinner. But the moment she touched the fabric, soft and cool against her skin, she knew she would wear it. Not because of the label, but because it was him. Because somehow, in just a few days, Graham had become the one person she couldn't say no to. The knock at her door came exactly at 7. She opened it to find him there, wearing a dark gray suit that looked devastatingly good on him, his tie loose enough to suggest he hadn't come straight from a boardroom. "You look," Graham trailed off, his gaze sweeping over her slowly, reverently. "Incredible." Maya laughed under her breath. "You're not so bad yourself." He offered his arm, and she slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, letting him lead her downstairs where a sleek town car waited. As they drove, Maya glanced sideways at him. "Are you ever going to tell me the real reason you keep showing up like a knight in shining armor?" Graham smiled, but this time there was a flicker of something vulnerable beneath it. "Maybe tonight." The car pulled up in front of a glittering glass tower. Maya craned her neck, trying to see the top, but it disappeared into the clouds. "What is this place?" "You'll see," Graham said, guiding her inside. The lobby was all marble and gold accents, but they didn't stop there. Instead, they stepped into a private elevator that whisked them up to the 50th floor in seconds. When the doors opened, Maya gasped. A rooftop garden stretched out before her, fairy lights strung between trees, soft music floating through the air. A single table sat in the center, surrounded by flickering candles. "You did all this?" Maya whispered. "For you," Graham said simply. He led her to the table, pulling out her chair before settling across from her. As they ate, Maya found herself relaxing into the easy rhythm they always seemed to find together. But there was a tension in Graham tonight, something he was holding back. Halfway through dessert, he set down his fork and leaned forward, his expression serious. "I need to tell you something," he said. Maya's heart stumbled. "Okay. I wasn't completely honest when we met," Graham said. "I wasn't just some guy who lost his phone." Maya stayed silent, letting him speak. "My company Bishop Holdings, it's bigger than I let on. I'm not just comfortable. He hesitated, then said it plainly. "I'm one of the wealthiest men in the country." Maya stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was some elaborate joke. But there was only sincerity there, and a tightness around his mouth that betrayed how much this admission cost him. She set down her fork carefully. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because people treat me differently when they know," Graham said. "They see the money, not me. I didn't want that with you." Maya sat back, absorbing it. It explained so much: the effortless luxury, the way doors opened for him without question, the way he carried himself like someone who had never had to ask permission for anything. "But you're telling me now," she said slowly. "Because I can't stand the idea of you not knowing the real me." Graham said. Because I want more with you, Maya. More than just borrowed moments. She looked down at her hands, the candlelight catching on the delicate bracelet she hadn't even realized he must have slipped onto her wrist earlier. It was simple, understated, but beautiful, like he understood her better than she understood herself. When she looked up, Graham was watching her with something raw and unguarded in his eyes. I don't need your money, Graham, Maya said quietly. I just need you to be real with me. I can do that, he said, his voice rough. She pushed her chair back and stood, walking around the table until she was standing in front of him. He rose slowly, as if afraid to spook her. Maya reached up, cupping his jaw in her hands. You're not the only one who's scared, she said. I don't know what I'm doing either. But I want to find out. Graham closed his eyes for a moment, like he was absorbing her words, then opened them and pulled her into him, wrapping his arms around her like he never meant to let go. They stood there under the lights and the stars, the city humming quietly below them, and for the first time, Maya felt like she had stepped into the kind of story she had always shelved behind glass at the bookstore, only this time, it was hers. Later, as the driver pulled up in front of her building, Maya hesitated. She didn't want the night to end. Graham seemed to sense it. Come with me, he said, his voice low. Where? Anywhere, he said. Everywhere. Maya laughed, the sound bubbling up uncontrollably. You're impossible. But you're thinking about it, Graham said, his smile slow and real. She shook her head, still laughing. I have work in the morning. Then I'll wait, he said easily. However long it takes. He kissed her then, not tentative, not cautious, but full of certainty and promise. When she finally pulled away, breathless and smiling, she whispered, Don't be late. The next morning, Maya found a bouquet of sunflowers waiting outside her door, along with a note in Graham's unmistakable handwriting. Sunflowers for the girl who brightens everything. Dinner again tonight? Maya pressed the note against her chest, grinning like an idiot. She didn't know what the future held. But she knew this: Graham Bishop had fallen for her. Not because she was rich, or powerful, or anything other than exactly who she was. And for the first time in her life, Maya Preston wasn't afraid to fall right back. The following evening, Maya found herself standing outside an opulent building she had only seen once before, the Bishop Hotel. Graham had sent a car for her, along with a handwritten note asking her to meet him at the rooftop garden. No explanations, no hints, just a simple, hopeful request. The lobby was a masterpiece of polished stone and crystal chandeliers, but Maya barely noticed as she was guided straight to a private elevator. When the doors opened at the top floor, she stepped into a scene almost too breathtaking to be real. Candles floated in shallow pools of water that lined the pathway, their soft glow lighting the way through a maze of blooming flowers. Above, strings of delicate fairy lights crisscrossed the open sky, casting a warm, golden hue over everything. In the center of it all stood Graham, waiting. He wore a midnight black suit, no tie, just the top button of his shirt undone. His hands were tucked into his pockets, but there was no mistaking the tension in his posture, the way he held himself like he was bracing for something important. Maya walked toward him slowly, her heels clicking lightly against the stone. As she reached him, he pulled his hands free, revealing a small velvet box. Her breath caught. You told me once, Graham said quietly, that you were scared of living an ordinary life. She nodded, her throat too tight for words. I want to give you a life that's extraordinary, he continued, his voice roughened by emotion. Not because of the money, or the places we'll go, but because you'll never have to doubt that you are loved. Every single day. He opened the box, revealing a ring so delicate, so perfectly chosen, that Maya's eyes blurred with tears. A single, brilliant diamond set in a slender band of white gold, elegant and timeless. Marry me, Maya Preston, Graham said, his voice steady despite the emotion burning in his eyes. Not because I can give you everything, but because you already gave me everything that matters. Maya couldn't stop the tears now, but she was smiling too, a smile so wide it hurt. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you." Graham slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then cupped her face and kissed her like he was sealing a vow. Around them, the city lights shimmered, but Maya barely noticed. The only thing real was the way his hands framed her face, the way his mouth moved against hers, the way her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. When they finally broke apart, Graham rested his forehead against hers. "You make me believe in things I thought I lost a long time ago," he said. "You make me brave enough to chase things I never thought I deserved," Maya whispered back. He tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. "I'm not letting you go. Not ever. You're stuck with me now," she teased, her voice thick with happiness. "Exactly the way I want it," Graham said, his grin breaking through all the tension and lighting up his face. Afterward, they celebrated with a private dinner on the rooftop, just the two of them, the stars and the city their only witnesses. Graham had arranged for a small string quartet to play softly in the background, and Maya couldn't stop staring at the ring that now gleamed on her finger, catching the candlelight with every tiny movement. Later that night, barefoot and giddy, they danced together on the rooftop, no music but their laughter and the whispered promises between them. "You know," Graham murmured, spinning her slowly, "I'm going to have to show you all the places I imagined us going." "All of them?" Maya teased, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Every single one," he promised, his mouth brushing her temple. "Starting with Paris." Maya laughed against his chest. "You're really setting the bar high, Bishop." "For you?" he said, pulling her close. "There is no bar high enough." The weeks that followed passed in a blur of wedding plans and stolen moments. Maya insisted on something small and intimate, and Graham, despite the endless resources at his disposal, agreed without hesitation. On a crisp spring afternoon, in a sun-drenched garden surrounded by close friends and a few of Graham's most trusted colleagues, they exchanged vows that were simple but heartfelt. "I choose you," Graham said, his voice steady as he slid a second ring onto her finger. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after." "I choose us," Maya replied, her own hands trembling. "Because you made me believe in forever." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Graham didn't wait for permission. He swept her into his arms and kissed her, laughter and tears mingling between them. Their first dance wasn't choreographed or formal. It was messy and full of laughter, spinning barefoot across the grass while their guests clapped and cheered. Afterward, Graham surprised her with tickets tucked into her bouquet, a month-long trip across Europe, just the two of them. "I want you to have every adventure you ever dreamed of," he whispered as they slipped away from the crowd. "And I want you," Maya said, resting her head against his chest. "That's more than enough." As the sun set over the horizon, casting the world in hues of gold and pink, they stood together at the edge of the garden, hand in hand, the future wide open before them. Later, in the quiet of their honeymoon suite overlooking the Seine, Graham pulled her close and whispered against her skin. "You're not just my love, Maya. You're my home. And you," she whispered back, tracing the line of his jaw, "are my forever." Outside, Paris glowed with endless possibilities, but inside, wrapped in each other's arms, they already had everything they would ever need.